morning, Planeteers. So good to be on this stage with you for the second time today. In the morning, we talked about the ocean. Now we are going to talk about the land. So I'm Catarina Canelas. I'm a journalist from CNN. And in the next 25-30 minutes, we are having a conversation about land stewards of the future embracing regenerative approaches. This is a challenge. And what an amazing guest I have here with me. Evan Sellers is a philanthropist and environmentalist involved in various organizations and efforts to conserve and to restore nature in Portugal. Hello, Evan. Thank you so much for joining us here in Planeteers. You have been working to make the world a better place through land conservation and socio-economic environmental regeneration in our country. So I thank you for that. You have Fundação Terra Livre, and there are more than 1,600 hectares around Idanha Velha in Castelo Branco. So this is going to be the first land conservation identity in Portugal. So this is a new concept for us. So tell us about it. Because I know it's a new concept for us, but it has 150 years old in the US.
So just very briefly, the concept of land conservation has a very long history going back even before that to more indigenous people who live in harmony with nature. But 5 years ago, we started this project of trying to create in Portugal a land conservation entity. Unfortunately, in Portugal, we don't have the we don't have the status of a trust. So we went for the status of a foundation because it can be structured very much like a trust, which means that you give sort of a direction that's very difficult to change, and then the executive has to execute it. And the idea of the trust is new, both worldwide and in Portugal, because what the foundation basically commits to is never to sell the land that comes into the foundation, which is an extremely important element of conservation. Because if I go out and I conserve and invest a lot of energy and time to fix somebody's problem, their children don't want to continue it and undo what we've done, it's a big loss of time and effort.
Yes, I made this pause because I thought your micro was going to fail, but it doesn't. So this takes us, what you explained to us, to a concept that I think it's really important for all of us to understand it, that is the guardian steward. What is the guardian steward?
So the foundation will own the land and will make a commitment never to sell it, which means that it won't get any debt on the land, any mortgages, and it won't do anything that puts in jeopardy its primary fiduciary goal, which is to never sell the land. But to take care of the land, it will open a relationship with a guardian. And a guardian, we call it a guardian, but it's a land steward. A steward is not one person, it's a collective. So anybody in Portugal or in the world could come to the foundation and say, we would like to be a steward of one of your lands. And we ask them to present us a vision for that particular land of 150 years, a minimum of 150 years, meeting certain criteria of care. And if we are comfortable with that guardian, then we would give them a 100-year lease right, or what in Portugal we call direitos de superfície, for that land. And then the foundation would monitor over the next 100 years. I won't be around, probably you won't either, yes, nor the steward, but the idea is that we open up our relationship to land in a long-term perspective.
But you told us about these two different elements that are very important, but we also know that Portugal is sexy for foreigners. And do we get a risk here? Because it's risky, it's tricky. Sometimes people come and they say, okay, I'm going to take care of the land, but it's very difficult for you to get to the ideal point in the criteria to choose a person or a collective.
Yeah, it's a good question, and it's something that I think about a lot right now. But it doesn't have to be a foreigner or a Portuguese. That distinction is not relevant. The distinction that's important is that the person really, what we've seen to be the key element in regeneration is collective intelligence. I can take the best expert in Portugal, who's actually right now for me a South African, who's actually in charge of the program of environmental development in the 1,600 hectares we have in Idânia. He's also running Renatur Monchique. He's also running Renatur Leiria. But he has specific knowledge that when he goes to another side of Portugal, maybe doesn't apply anymore because the vegetation is different, the land is different, and so forth. So regardless of who the person is, there's no expert, in my opinion, in Portugal today that's... I should take that back. It's difficult to find experts anywhere in the world that are used to thinking 30, 40, 50 years ahead when they plan what they're going to do with land.
We can't do it in a short period of time, thinking that in a short period of time.
Regeneration. So I have been to some sites where eucalyptus is growing. You're probably all familiar with it, where they terrace the land in schisto rock. To regenerate something like that would take about 100 years.
100 years?
Yes.
It's a long time.
So we're talking very long perspectives, a lot of effort, a lot of investment.
And visionary also.
Yeah, so I've described two roles, the steward and the foundation, and there's other elements, like how do we fund the stewards while they're on that journey of 30 years? Because if you plant a tree, even if you plant eucalyptus, you're not going to get any money from it for 7, 8, 9, 10 years. If you plant an oak, you probably won't get any money from it for 35 years. So how do we help these people in the meantime?
And this takes us to my other doubt, my other question, because what is really the essence of the concept of regeneration? You have been talking about that, but specifically, and what's the difference compared to sustainable scenario as we know it nowadays? Because it's two different points, and it's very important for us to know the difference.
The problem with all of these words is that they get taken by different people, and then they're given different meanings. And we have this concept of greenwashing, where you say, you just put the sign on your door and you say, we're doing it, but when you go and you scratch a little bit, you don't find very much going on. So I don't know. People struggle today in some areas to say, what is regenerative? Okay? And I was listening to a project the other day in Portugal where they said, okay, we are taking care of the biodiversity, and we're taking care of the water, and we're taking care of the land. But it's a group of foreigners that aren't really opening themselves up to the Portuguese that live around them. And from that moment, just from that perspective, it ceases to be regenerative for me. Okay? They consider it to be a regenerative project. People that might look at them might say regenerative, but for me it's almost like a colonial project. It's like us arriving in...
That's why I was talking about the risk. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but that's why I asked you about the risk. This is one of the risks.
Yeah, I mean, I know another gentleman, an Englishman that came here, bought some land, wanted to do regeneration. He's part of several regenerative circles that I'm involved with. And the first thing he did was cut down all the trees. There were eucalyptus, but he cut down all the trees. We already know today that it's rarely in the regeneration of land you cut all the eucalyptus. You usually do it in a extended process over quite a few years. And what happened was when the rains came in the winter, now, it washed all the topsoil away from his land. So he actually did more harm in that action than before. The problem is, if you have good intentions today, whether you're a foreigner or a Portuguese, and you want to meet somebody who can advise you, usually you go to the local cafe or bar at the end in your village and you say, who knows about regeneration? They say, oh, regeneration, speak to Carlos over there. And Carlos knows how to use a chainsaw, but he's never really thought about 25, 30-year perspective, biodiversity. In fact, in Portugal today, you cannot get funding under the disbursements of the European Union for a biodiverse forest. You can have a forest that's a monoculture of eucalyptus next to a forest that's a monoculture of pine next to a forest that's a monoculture of oak. So what we're trying to do as well is to bring together people, I think somebody mentioned it earlier, in a federation, in a guild, in a network, so that we can go to the government and say, we are 500, it was the young lady who was talking about the Forestry Association. We are 1,000 regenerative foresters, agriculture.
We need more political attitude
and we need
right
to
now.
change some of the regulations that actually impact the work we're doing.
And you talk about monoculture, it's very important, but what has been done in practice, and this takes us to other key points that I think they are very important. Water and soil and resilience and regeneration. Because we have a really problem with water in Portugal right now.
Well,
then we have the climate change also. If we think about the 2 degrees, warm up to 2 degrees, Portugal is not an exception. It can happen in our country. So I think we have to take consideration in these 2 key points. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, where we are today is not the result of something we did in the last 2 or 3 years. I mean, it can be, but it's generally the result of something we've been doing for 50, 70, 100 years. I mean, if you go into Santarém, the area around Santarém, which is considered to be some of the most fertile land in the country, and you pick up the sand, you pick up the earth in your hand, it's going to go through your hand almost like if you were on the beach. It's lost all its organic material, okay? To put that organic material back into that soil will take a long time, at least maybe 4 or 5 years, okay, with lots of manure and lots of other things, if you want to go in that direction. And then once you put the manure in, you start to, once you increase the soil, the organic content of your soil, you will start to retain water more. So we have always the possibility to do this, but it goes sometimes against commercial interests. It's difficult to make money in today's business world and to do regeneration. That's where the conflict is.
So we need to involve everyone, not only the political attitude, but also the communities and the commercials.
Well, I can't speak for someone else. If somebody just wants to produce a monoculture, they'll do it one way. For the work that the foundation wants to do, for the work that I think is important in regeneration, I think it's very important.
In your opinion?
Not just the communities, but everybody that lives around. So in the area of Vidania Velha, where we have now begun for the last 4 years a project around regeneration of 1,600 hectares of very degraded land, we have a project of 30 years ahead of us. For the first phase, there's a 150-year vision. But we've started to involve the people in Vidania Velha, who are about 50 families, but we would like to start involving all of the other communities so that they feel that the project is also theirs, and so that their children and their children's children, who already are no longer part of living there, they're living in Lisbon or they're living in Luxembourg, begin to start coming back and beginning to see the project as also something that interests them.
So I was going to ask you what you are talking about. What about the local producers? So this is one of the main things that you do, and this goes on the way of the ecosystem services.
So I'm very interested in, for instance, in the gentleman that spoke before us, because what we're looking for are private enterprises that can come and get involved with us. For instance, we know in Latin America that mate, the tea, the drink, they're producers that come and grow their produce at the same time that the forests are being built and so forth. And so we're very keen to bring in private initiatives to work along us, because in any agroforestry project, in any regeneration project, you're probably going to have some forest, some agriculture, and some animal husbandry. They work very well together. They're actually needed together to make the thing work. So we will also look to encourage people socioeconomically around. You know, if somebody wants to make a beer factory and we can provide some of the ingredients for that, or we can provide marketplaces that help people to sell their products, that is going to be an integral part of what I think is called regeneration. But I'd like to make one last point. Whenever we talk about regeneration, we tend to think that all we have to do is improve the soil, improve the water, improve the biodiversity. But I insist, from my point of view, that if we don't start to consume less, if we don't start to investigate other models of economics, such as degrowth models, models where you don't have to every year achieve 4 or 5% growth in your bottom line and in your business, we're not going to, we can regenerate all we want. In Portugal, 100,000 hectares burns every year. Burns, okay? I'm not talking about degrading.
Yes.
Our project is 1,600 hectares. That's 1.6% of that, and it's going to take us 30 years to do that. On other lands, it might take us 100 years, like I told you, okay? So even if all of us shifted all of our attention and resources to this regeneration, it's not going to do anything if we don't also make shifts in other aspects of the way that we live.
Yes, and the main point here is about what you were saying, because it's not possible to consume as we do it in this kind of economic model that we have. We need 2.5 planets. So this is, when we talk about 2.5 planets, it's this is we think this is the worst case scenario. And we are not working for the worst case scenario. We don't want to work to the worst case scenario. We want to leave a legacy, and your foundation wants to leave a legacy also.
Yeah, I mean, I hear all of the doom scenarios. All of us do today. It's impossible not to. But I try to focus in what I do and what my colleagues do on where can we actually make an impact. You know,
of course, difference.
I can't stop the consumption of plastic in the world, but I can go and recycle the plastic that I generate in my home, or I can go to my local beach and I can pick up the plastic there. So I think what each of us can do is focus on where we can make a difference rather than trying to solve the planet's problems.
Even when is it possible, or is it possible to visit?
Well, the foundation is waiting for the approval.
And I'm asking for me,
okay.
It's my curiosity, but also the audience. I think lots of people here want to know more about it and maybe go there and have another perspective.
Well, the headquarters of the foundation is in my house in Tomar, so you just give me a call and come and knock on the door anytime you want. But if you want to visit the project in Idanha Velha, they're open, they receive visitors all the time. I'm on the board of WOOF, which is the volunteers for organic farming in Portugal, and they had their meeting there 2 weeks ago. So they're already having seminars and so forth in Idanha Velha. It's a very beautiful. But the foundation will be much more than one property, I hope, in the years to come. So you'll be able to. We hope that these different properties will become models for a new way of working with the land.
We have here a different audience. We have people from science, academicals. We have here people from politics, environmentalists, activists. Well, so the stage is yours. So do you want for us to, we are running out of time. It's only 25 minutes. So do you have a key message to leave to these people who are listening to you, including me?
Thank you for the time. I think for me the key message has been for me to connect with nature. So I garden 5 or 6. I'm a farmer. I spend 5 or 6 hours a day with my hands in the earth, and I think that's the thing that guides me more than meditation or any of the other things that I do, which I think are also important. But just I think, and that's one of the beautiful things that I love about Portugal, is the povo that really is very connected to the earth, even if I don't always agree with some of the practices of caring for it that I see here in Portugal. But I love it, and I love to be able to discuss with my neighbor which potato or which onion or what I should have done this or that. So that's what keeps me sane. Yeah.
Beautiful because, that's beautiful because it comes from the heart, and we are people. Before we are anything in our professions, we are people, we are individuals, we are humans, and we need that humankind, and we can't lose it. So thank you very much, Ivan. Can we meet in Idanha Nova? In
Sure.
Idanha Velha? It's a deal, okay?
It's a deal.
Thank you very much, Ivan. Thank you very much
Thank you.
for the audience. I'm sure that now, as one man that I admire a lot said, one day we have more knowledge than we have since ever in the planet. These are words from Sir David Attenborough. We have the more knowledge than ever to face these urgent challenges. So I think let's use it in the right way, because we can do it, otherwise we weren't here. So thank you very much. Have a rest of a good day. Good evening.
Thank you.